Okay, so we are looking at some power rankings today. Those are always fun. So I'll give people a moment to pile in here, but you know how I do this. I'm not keeping any big secrets of what they look like. They are, for the most part, up on screen here. There's actually two teams, I believe, that are not here that I'd like to put here. I did not update the template because I don't control this template, and the template I do control on the other site is gone, etc. But teams that I would have put in here is I would have put after Waterloo, but before IWU, I'd have liked to put in Mizzou and New York University. And New York University and Mizzou are both sort of important teams for what they accomplished. We'll get to them first. Mizzou did take down Converse, took down Converse. Converse lost to Mizzou. I believe that was Kentucky qualifiers, so that's first to two rather than first to three, a little bit shorter matches, but that's a big deal. They also got some maps off Ball State, got a map off Northeastern, so while it may have been Converse underperforming, it wasn't just some one flash in a pan moment. Mizzou has some real strength there, and in terms of their losses, NEU, Ball State, Delaware, those are reasonable losses. Delaware is probably going to be a new one to people. UW Blue Hens. I would put those guys, they're actually the third team. I apologize. There's three that aren't on here. And if I was to grab the UW Blue Hens, I would have those actually right ahead of Ball State here. So this should be Blue Hens. This should be Mizzou plus we would also like to have the New York Ultraviolets. And I think people sort of went, oh, well, the New York Ultraviolets lost to Delaware, so they can't be real. No, that's not the right way to think about this. There is everyone below this line, let me rephrase that. Teams in this group have been very wild with what they've accomplished. They have losses that you wouldn't have expected. They're underperforming, etc. We believe they can play higher, but they're underperforming. And teams below this line are also all over the place, absolute nightmares in terms of teams winning and losing matches that they shouldn't, and the matchups just being absolute chaos. For example, we have, IWU beat Ball State. Well, that's quite a big surprise to some people. We have other things where we see A&M Maroon, who don't even make it in here, beat IWU. What? We have A&M Maroon. Does that just mean they're a better team? No, because they lost to McMaster's B team. McMaster's B team, I'm sorry, is just not a good team. Like, Northeastern, who's okay, a good team, but not like a top five team, can beat that team off rolling with subs in. Like that's just what that team is. But that beat IWU, and IWU beat Ball State. Like again, you see how this gets very weird. That's not me being like, oh, and that means Northeastern is a top five team. That's me saying things are a freaking mess because A&M Maroon loses to McMaster's B team, but A&M Maroon beats IWU, but IWU beats Ball State, but Ball State can threaten, can threaten teams up here, like Bellevue. It's just wild, and that's where we are. So again, very chaotic right now in Collegiate when we're looking at these teams. That could just be the brawlish meta, Bastion Brawl. That could be the chaos of the meta, whatever, that's causing some teams to be pretty inconsistent, but it is a fun place that we're in. So other than those three teams, me not having icons for them, let me go ahead and... You don't know how A&M lost to McMaster's beat, right? Right? Like, you probably saw on this channel what that match looked like. And it's not that McMaster's B was missing some key player when we played them. We've played them here and then played them previously in Dive Party. Like they're not. Yeah. So it's just been wild, and there's been plenty of examples like that. I mean, UCSD is always a wild team, but Marist beat UCSD, so you go, oh, okay, that's part of why UCSD has fallen. Absolutely, though UCSD again has always been a bit wild. But then if we wanted to look at Marist, they also lost to the Pizza Pirates. Well, the Pizza Pirates were pretty good last season, so we went, oh, maybe they're just better than we think. But it all just gets pretty darn messy. By the way, I would put the Pizza Pirates if I had to. It's not a tragedy that they don't have one, but I'd probably put them right ahead of Marist, around here, with UCLA. Maybe the other side of UCLA doesn't really matter. But it's just a mess. We've had the Ohio State stuff, all that fun stuff. But we'll now go through this a bit more in order. Just wanted to start with some of the it is chaos. We are very much in a chaos season. Again, I think New York University and some of the matches that it took in terms of New York actually had a couple surprises when we look at them. We can specifically point out, that they beat UST, them beating UST. That's huge. That's why UST, instead of being up here, is all the way down in here. We can see that they beat Georgia Tech, which I certainly would not have predicted. I might have thought that to be a pretty good match, but I would have meaningfully favored Georgia Tech. But then they lost to Delaware, so clearly they're not just like a crazy good team. They're just a, low bubble team, but low bubble team shouldn't be able to beat UST. And we saw Bellevue just got hard crushed by BSCVA, and that's weird. And Bellevue doesn't really have anything holding them up except the Converse win, but Converse took a loss to Mizzou, who I've got down in this spot right here. I just don't have an icon for them. But Converse doesn't have a ton holding them up either, so maybe this whole tier needs to come down from like a 10 to 14 team, which is where I think, maybe 8 to 14, 7 to 14 is where people would have had these before. I've dropped them down to like the lower end of top 20. Do they need to drop out of the top 20? Is that what we do with this? This has gotten wild. And I'm here for it. It's what makes Collegiate so much fun. UCLA has kind of imploded in previous seasons as well. Speaking of which, I think you guys might have a little bit of that going on. I saw you picked up 3 losses. Maybe one of those was a DQ. I don't really count DQs because, whatever stuff. But UCLA UCLA seems to have a little bit of mental tilt issues. They can play pretty well. They can play, at a top 30, top 25 level maybe, but then sometimes they'll maybe like UCSD, like we've seen them beat UCSD when UCSD is a good team, but we've also seen them lose kind of silly matches. If I pull up their matches, because I do of course have that, UCLA beat UCSD, but then lost to MSOE Raiders. That's not a real team. Like you can't be losing to that. And that's what I'm talking about, where we're back into the chaos down here. So it just gets fun. The other thing before we get into the rankings that I suppose I should go over is we can quickly look at the standings for ABC, the most premier. I look at more than just this, but this is the most premier of the Overwatch tournaments. And we're, by the way, no one gets to surf on coattails of last season anymore. We are 4+ weeks into this, 8+ matches into ABC Swiss, 4+ weeks into the actual season of Overwatch and Collegiate here. So that's part of why you won't just see me going, oh, but, Converse was really good last year, or, oh, but UST, got like top 6 last year, or, oh, hey, Bellevue has a great roster. I don't care what your roster looks like anymore. I don't care about what you did last season anymore. You have to have put up results. The only exception for that is, hey, you just haven't had any hard matches, or you lost your incredibly hard matches, but you were supposed to because they were against these two teams, and it's not your fault that all of your matches have been against sub-25 opponents. I guess we won't knock you down, sort of thing. But, no one should be surfing on coattails of previous season anymore. SLU sucks right now. I'm going to keep it real. You'll notice they didn't make top 30, top 40 even. I don't think I actually listed out 40 here, but yeah, it looks like you guys are having a rough time. UCLA is not having as rough a time, but they've got a funny one there. I did want to point out, looking at these standings here, we do see Boise. They're a bit of a mess right now, specifically because we just had the Overwatch League Finals weekend, and that led to some forfeits. Some might argue Boise is undefeated right now because they got a forfeit win against Maryville, who had players at the Owl Finals and rescheduled, didn't work out, whatever. so be it. We have some teams that are probably going to miss playoffs that would have been top 32 contenders that picked up a DQ that are now probably out because they have three losses, and their other two losses might have been okay before, but now won't be good enough. Only about 25% of the 7-3 teams are expected to get in to the playoffs when it's a top 32 bracket like this. So, even just like whatever it was, 30 DQs, I'm making up the number in this round, in this late round, has a pretty big impact. 30 DQs in an earlier round, ironically, if it had been 2 weeks ago, wouldn't actually have had nearly as big of an impact. So yeah, looking at this, the other thing that I want to point out from that is there's sort of three untested teams now that have 7-1 records. CSULB Gold. It's really weird that we see this team 7-1. Utah. It's not necessarily crazy to see 7-1, but that is an untested 7-1. And University of Washington, same thing. These are the three 7-1 teams that you look at them and go, whoa, they're really highly doing well in the standings. Two of these teams just they got a DQ win. That's not necessarily their fault. Maybe they couldn't reschedule, whatever. And then CSULB just had the luckiest bracket you've ever seen in terms of paths through here. And I'll just show these real quick just so people know what I'm talking about. Looks like these guys didn't take a DQ win. They just took an early loss to University of St. Thomas. But you'll notice none of these wins mean anything. Cal Esports is maybe 4-4. Top 32 teams are, mostly 4-5 at this point. I suppose the lower end of top 32 might be 4-4, but there's not. This certainly isn't good enough. This certainly isn't what you'd expect a 7-1 path to look like right here. So they just kind of got lucky. Whatever. Rutgers' second team is probably the second best win that they have here. Yeah. University of Utah, they've been very good before. You wouldn't want to count those guys out. This is not a real win. I know it says 3-0 over Bellevue. This was a DQ win. We can click in and see. One of the ways to tell is 0 points on the board for Bellevue. Don't get me wrong, Bellevue may be falling apart, but that's not what happened. I also did go talk to Utah. We had warmed up with them prior, so it was just like, oh hey, did you guys actually end up playing them, etc. So that is not a 3-0. That is a DQ win. And we look through this, and they lost to Georgia Tech. Well, Georgia Tech has 3 losses. In fact, if we look at Georgia Tech, we can see from our standings here that, let's see, Georgia Tech beat Miami, Ohio, Utah, Ohio State, Columbia International. They lost to Northwood. They also lost to New York Ultraviolets and to Rutgers' second team. So we have a team that's 7-1, that their loss was to someone who lost to Rutgers' second team? No, and if we dig into this, will we go, oh, wait, is Rutgers' second team just amazing? Rutgers' second team is solid, don't get me wrong, but no. Rutgers' second team is not a top 25 team. It's just not. Okay. Yes, they are. You guys might sneak them in. You guys did sneak them into groups once or twice before. You've threatened top 32. You threatened maybe top 16 because when we have groups, we do top 16. Anyway, that's just funny. But the point that I'm making here is, we have this team in here. We have these guys in here who lost to Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech lost to New York, and New York might actually be a top 32 team, but I would believe that. I think they probably are, in fact. And Rutgers Reign. And Rutgers Reign might be top 32 on a lucky day, but certainly I didn't expect them to 3-0 Georgia Tech Gold. I'll just put it that way. And then University of Washington, again, looks like they're 7-1. They, got a DQ win. I don't know if they forced that or couldn't reschedule or what, but the best win they have here is maybe Redbirds Academy. That's not ISU. That's not Maine Redbirds. And even if it was, Maine Redbirds is not the team that it was last season or the season before. They're sort of taking this semester off, though now that Overwatch League is over, maybe they'll suddenly pump up with great players for next semester, or the GMU Patriots. So this is Redbird's second team. Their first team isn't in the tournament, and their first team is weaker than usual. And GMU Patriots, maybe like a 4-2 team, like, and they've got a loss to UCSD Gold. And UCSD Gold is not in my top 20 right now. UCSD Gold can punch up, but they're not in my top 20 right now. So, again, that's not me saying these three teams are bad. These are just teams that did not have to prove anything to get 7-1 records, and 7-1 records are pretty darn good right now. Those, for the most part, go at a premium. There's only 12 teams, because I know BSCVA did just lose their match to Northwood there. Okay, so who have that record or better. Okay, so that's that. So let's get back to actual power rankings, and I'm going to make some enemies with this one. Mostly when we get back down to our questionable threats. But as we go through here, we see Maryville and Fisher Wisps. I still do have both of these teams as the top two teams, with Maryville as the top team. Obviously, Maryville, did win a head-to-head there, and that certainly helps. But some people might be going, oh, okay, but why? Isn't Boise 8-0, and doesn't that mean Boise beat Maryville? No, again, that was a DQ win. I don't count DQs. It's I know it's a little bit weird. You can game my system. I don't count DQ wins when I'm determining the strength of teams for power rankings, but I will factor in matches where you feel like you lost because you were playing with a sub. I know that's weird, and it sort of goes, well, then we should forfeit when we have a sub rather than play with the sub. No, you shouldn't do that. That's bad, but I do consider your roster depth something. On the other hand, I just don't consider DQs. Maybe that's a tiny weakness in how I do my rankings, but I actually do think that gets the best results, because everyone and their grandmother will write you an essay about, oh, well, we had subs in and this and that. And okay, well, like any other sport in college or high school or professional, major leagues, whatever, yeah, your bench matters. It doesn't matter as much as your starters, but your bench does matter. Okay, Boise, I think roster-wise, Rutgers is probably in most metas. Rutgers would be the third best team, and would sort of sit in this half tier between the big boys and these really good teams by itself. But this seems to be a really good meta for Boise. They, of course, got a nice win over Northwood. They got a win over St. Clair, Illinois Orange, UCSD. It's a Bastion meta. Bastion meta is very good for Boise. Maybe they'll stay this good when the meta shifts, but Boise looks good right now. I would have actually really liked to see the Boise versus Maryville match. That would have been quite interesting. I don't think Boise could win that, but I could maybe see a world where Boise could have won this match. But hey, we didn't get it. That's life. Then we're going to go ahead and move on to the really strong team tier, better than your team. And Northwood, they've got the win over Fisherman that they picked up in week 1. They've got a win over BSC that they just picked up now, literally maybe an hour ago, less than an hour ago. They got to have a win over UST, St. Thomas, and then, that's and then Northwood has a loss to Boise. Okay, that's fine. Lost to Boise. Boise worked their way into that upper half tier there. Most of this isn't too changed. Fishermen, I don't really feel the need to go over, though if we do look at it, they do have a win against Iowa, Winthrop, lost to Northwood. That's not really great support to put them here, and I don't love to have a team this high without great support at this point, but they haven't lost any matches that they're not supposed to lose either. So they're kind of just going to rest on their laurels here, because they look pretty clean, actually. Some of those losses have been good. I know it's weird, but they had a good loss to Northwood, and they've looked solid. I don't see a need for them to fall down here. St. Clair and BSCVA a few weeks ago probably would have been down in the 12 to 16 range, something in that world. I think that's where I had them as 12 and 16 respectively, maybe 12 and 15, maybe 14, 15. I don't know, something along those lines. They've proven that they are better teams, and some other teams have fallen, like we said. So they've been doing well this year. St. Clair's ads have made a difference. And when we look at their wins, St. Clair has a win over Irvine, a win over BSC, a win over Grandview. Um, those are all pretty good. BSC, on the other hand, has a win over Arizona State University, Bellevue, NEU, and Fisher Chips. They've, of course, got the loss to St. Clair and Northwood there. So, looking pretty solid for both of those teams. Something that we did see slip up, ironically, for the won't slip up tier, is Irvine. Irvine, lost to St. Clair, which kind of surprised everyone. Most people would have said Irvine top 5, top 6 team. Usually they are. On the flip side, Irvine is one of those teams that's kind of notorious for practicing more when it matters for playoffs than they do the rest of the season, at least historically. Maybe a little less true last season, but maybe they're back in that, or maybe they just mentally don't have it together, aren't making things work. But they did, lose to quite an upset there. What would have at the time been quite an upset there, anyways, to St. Clair. And they also played Fisher Wisp and just, didn't look good from everything that I'm hearing at all. So that's why we're seeing that down here. Redbirds, this is Redbirds' main team that we're ranking. They're not playing in ABC, and that is super annoying, but there's nothing we can really do about it. They are still playing in Legends Division, I believe, and a couple other things. I believe they're over in the Kentucky land, though they have to go through qualifiers to get in, and so they're playing in enough things that I'm still going to rank them. They're competing in Collegiate, just like I've ranked BSC sometimes in the past when they've been good enough, even though they haven't really been playing in ABC until this season. Or maybe it was last season was their first season. I don't remember. I think it's this season. So yeah, that's what we're looking at there. Oh, the scarf? No, I've got the scarf going. We're good. We're good. So then we get into these teams, and these teams, we can sort of ignore these for a moment. These teams here, they're solid. They're doing what they're supposed to. They're not messing up. They might not have the most impressive wins in the world, but they've, for the most part, got pretty good wins, and they're not losing silly matches. And again, in this fall season where teams are getting used to each other again, where we're in a brawl meta where teamwork and things clicking matter a bit more comparatively to the individual skill expression with gunplay and such that you see in poke meta or a dive meta, those sorts of things. Brawl allows for a little more randomness until people remember that Brawl has a lot to do with teamwork and timing and that sort of thing. And I know some people are going, Brawl, but we're in a poke meta. You keep telling yourself that. Keep telling yourself that. So between it being fall season, between it being a meta that sort of allows for, hey, good teamwork can actually punch higher than it usually does, or rather good teamwork can outdo simple gunplay expression the way that people are used to it. It's good to see some of these teams holding on here. So for Illinois Orange, we've got, let me pull this up. Excuse me. They beat Grandview. They beat Toronto. They lost to Boise. So we don't see, maybe the strongest win there, but we've put Grandview up in this tier. So, hey, that'll be something. ASU also has a win against Grandview. They've got a win against University of Texas Dallas, who's right over here. And they've also got a win against Oakland. Oakland is the team that Crawley went to. And then they've got losses to BSCVA and Rutgers. We can't really hold that against ASU. Rutgers all the way up here. BSCVA at least in the next tier. Whatever. Nothing too crazy there. Grandview has a win against Rutgers, but they have a win against Rutgers. I know I just said I count roster depth, I count this, and I do, but this one was just too extreme. Rutgers basically has 3 star players. 2 of their star players were out. They moved around their whole roster. They had their manager in who was like Diamond in Overwatch 1 if memory serves. I'm sorry if I just outed someone there that I wasn't supposed to. They're great. Like, they did quite good with that player back when they were like a top 20 team in Overwatch 1, but it's just not the same thing. So I can't call that match real. It's just too much of a scramble. I'm kind of surprised it wasn't just a forfeit. I suspect if they knew Grandview had been a decent team, it would have been a we'll try harder to get our players here or we will forfeit. But Grandview sort of appeared on the scene with that match. So hey, it happened. Um, so that's a really cool win for Rutgers, but I can't seriously count that. But hey, they've got the UST, NEU, Toronto, Columbia International, and then they've got a loss to St. Clair. So hey, they're doing all right. They're doing pretty well. They've established that yes, they are in fact a top 20 team. University of Texas Dallas, surprising to be in a stable tier. This is a team that we're sort of used to falling, losing matches they're not supposed to, and then punching above their weight and reestablishing. We're sort of expecting UTD to do that sort of thing, but right now they're just actually looking like a solid, stable team, unlike this tier or this tier down here where they have their win against UCI's second team, Ohio Esports, Cal, Drexel, lost to Fisher Wisps and ASU. Those are okay losses. They're not amazing wins, but they're doing what they're supposed to. They're stable. Fisher Navy's another one where we look at it and we go, okay, you don't really have any super impressive wins. Pittsburgh, San Diego State University, losses to Rutgers and Maryville. Those wins aren't doing much. I can't really blame you at all for losing to these teams. There's just no fault in that whatsoever. So you haven't lost any matches that you're supposed to win, so I'm not moving you down. On the other hand, that support looking a little bit weak. This is certainly a team that we'd look towards and go, it's time to prove yourself. We'd really like to see a more meaningful match for these guys. And that's true to a lesser degree, I think, for UTD as well. Whereas I think these teams have all effectively proven themselves at this point. You haven't really. You I'd like to see. But hey. Okay. So then we move on to the questionable threats, and I sort of started the video with this because I knew this would be the most controversial, but I think there's going to be... I am actually worried about the next Okra power rankings. These are my power rankings, of course. I've been doing this a bit longer than Okra, but I'm worried about the Okra power rankings. That's, of course, a committee of 20. I think there's going to be a little too much of, oh, we know these players, and they're good, so these teams must be good, without actually looking at results. And results matter. I don't care if the player is good in your latter games. I don't care if you played in Tier 2 or Tier 3 with them. What are the results looking like, and what do we expect of the future results, for what's left of the season, which isn't actually all that much longer for this first half season. Spring, that'll be different, but we're sort of looking at what do we expect, for the next few weeks here. And UST, yeah, last semester, UST finished great. So what? They lost to Rutgers. They weren't a top 4 team. But they lost to Rutgers. They went deep in that bracket. They, performed well. People recognize their roster. People expect them to be good. That's fantastic. But again, when we look at those results this season, it's not good. It's not good. We look at that, and we can see, hey, you beat Ball State. That's something. Ball State's probably a top 25 team, but Ball State has that loss to Illinois Wesley, and Illinois Wesley's roster certainly wouldn't wow people. They've got some okay wins that they've stacked up in general against, sort of mediocre teams, and then that one win against Ball State, but again, they also have that messy thing that is effectively a loss to, like, Texas A&M or Rebel Gaming or, however that mess wants to untangle in terms of, McMaster B. Yeah, there we go. If you do transitive property stuff. So what are you going to do with that? But again, UST, we look at that and we see, okay, you've got a win over CSULB, that 7-1 team that's totally unproven, a win over UF Orange, who looks like a top 50 team right now. Lost to Grandview, lost to New York Ultraviolets, or they don't go by Ultraviolets, I think they go by Legion now, but lost to New York. That's just not... They're lucky to be here as far as I'm concerned. It would be totally legit for people to completely drop them out of their top 20, because I think Ultraviolets are probably better than people give credit for, and I think some people are dismissing the Ultraviolets as like, oh, they lost to Delaware, so they're bad. Delaware's actually not that bad if you look at Delaware's results there. So I think it's just Delaware and Ultraviolets are pretty okay. Those are both top 30 teams now. But you shouldn't lose to a top 30 team, and this is their second excuse me, this isn't their second time doing it. This is them losing to a top 30 team. But we've also got Bellevue. Uh Bellevue is just, they're the ones who started the season, the preseason, even with the loss to, shoot, was it Ashland or was it to a team Ashland beat? Doesn't matter. They lost to a team that I believe they lost to Ashland, and then Iowa beat Ashland. And Iowa's actually pretty good. Iowa might be top 20, but that's what we're looking at. They started the season like that. Okay, they stabilized themselves by beating Converse. They, have a win against Ball State there. Those are okay, but Converse has lost to Mizzou. So I think people sort of went, oh, Converse is up here, so Bellevue can't fall more than from like 7 down to like 10 or 12 or wherever they want Converse to be. But I think what we actually have here is people just had a little bit of a bubble and didn't realize that no, Converse might not have been quite as strong as people thought going into the season. I know I had them rated a bit lower, but I don't think everyone did, and I think I'm lowering Converse a little. I am lowering Converse a little bit more still, and I'm lowering Bellevue all the way down to match them. Totally fair. I was actually probably harder on Bellevue than I was on Converse. I was expecting more of Converse than Bellevue. Don't ask how, but I saw that one coming. Toot my own horn a little bit there. Have I made enemies yet? Is chat screaming at me? Ohio mentioned. Okay. Very surprised by UST loss to NYU. Yeah. Yeah. And Bellevue got a bad match. Like, it was an absolute roll from what we could see. I'm looking at scoreline, not at everything. But if I look at this, let me take a final look here for I'll just re-pull the score report on that one real quick, because I remember looking at that one and it was like a 3-0, a 5-0. It was messy. It was messy. Must have been a 3-0. But it was not expected that BSC would crush Bellevue that hard, and they did. But let's move on, because this tier just makes me sad right now, because these teams should be better than this. Then we get to this next tier, and I think we're going to go past 20 teams in this tier. I sort of like to cut this tier at 20, but it's just not real to do so right now. I think the tier more looks like this. This is sort of the stable teams that are doing what they're supposed to. You could say Iowa's done more than it's supposed to, because Iowa sort of surprised some people. They got some good players, so I'm not that surprised. But Iowa has certainly moved up for this season, but they don't have any crushing wins that would be pushing them higher, and they aren't taking losses. And that's sort of what makes up this tier. They're not taking silly losses, but they don't have amazing wins either. And actually, once you get past like the top 15 teams in a lot of seasons, that's kind of what it's about. Be pretty darn good and be very consistent about being pretty good, darn good. Don't mess up. Now, obviously, you have to be faster, better, etc. to move higher, but let's move on here. Would love to hear ISU. Yeah, wouldn't we all? I would love to see what ISU is doing, but, they haven't had interesting matches as far as I'm concerned in the Kentucky qualifier yet. We'll see more as time goes on there, and we'll see more from Legends as well. Iowa could sneak into questionable threats right now. I actually think. Sorry, Toronto, I don't think you could do it. I think any of these teams could be in questionable threats. But I sort of decided to do my tier divide like this, because I actually find these questionable threats that I know can threaten up very questionable right now. In terms of their performance, it's very questionable. Whereas this is like a stable bubble. These teams are actually doing like, nope, put in today's work, get out of today's value. Put in today's work, get out of today's value. Like, these teams, stable. These teams, what are you doing? Are you good? Are you bad? I don't know. What are you doing? Are you good? Are you bad? I don't know. I know. I am very aware. Iowa certainly has the potential to push higher. Don't get me wrong, but you didn't win. Like, it looks great, but you didn't win. And oh well, we played them close. I can tweak around the edges with that, but you have to win matches to act, to like make real movements. You have to win matches, and it sometimes sucks because you get top 5 opponent, top 6 opponent when you're like a 20th ranked team, and you're like, what am I supposed to do with that? I'm playing them close, and it's good that you play them close. That means when you get a matchup against the number 12 opponent, the number 12 team, you can actually beat them. But you still got to get that match against the 12 team. I can't move you for losing to a top 6 team. Iowa State ahead of Maryville. There you go. There you go. So moving into our stable bubble teams here, these could really be in any order, to be truth be told. Well, just about any order. We've got Fisher Chips. They beat NYU. Okay, and NYU, again, has that win over UST there, so that certainly matters. They beat SLU, IWU, who we have as down here. Again, IWU has a win over Ball State. Okay, so that sort of makes sense. Reason Fisher Chip has some pretty solid wins that we'll look at and say, okay, fine. What are their losses to? BSCVA. Okay, yeah. So their cap is somewhere below this, and they're above probably this for sure. Okay. I'm good with that. They're in roughly the right place here. They could maybe be up here or up here, but we just don't have any evidence of that for now. They're a stable team who has no reason to move up, but is certainly not, is fending off challenges quite reasonably from okay teams. Then we move on to Iowa, and yes, Iowa did play close. I know, 3-2, good scoreline. They beat Marist. Remember, Marist is this team over here who beat UCSD. We still have UCSD rated ahead of Marist. I know, this tier is a mess. It's supposed to be. It's just the reality. I still think UCSD is the better team than Marist, but Marist isn't quite as bad as I think most teams would have. Most people go, huh? Who the heck is that? Sort of thing. Looking at Iowa, they beat Marist, they beat Rebel Gaming, they beat Ashland, Auburn. Okay, but none of those are good wins. Like, that's the thing. If those are the wins I have to list, there's no evidence. They're close losses don't move teams up, and there's just no evidence. You need a win. You need a win to move up. Like, those are the teams that I would beat. Marist, Rebel Gaming, Ashland, Auburn. You can't move into top 20 except maybe the bottom of the bubble with those as your wins. And I know the losses are good losses. ASU, Fisherman, like they're good losses. They were well played matches, but you can't move up by, I beat some top 30 teams. Okay, what? I can't put you at 15 over that. And it's not just I can't put you at 15 over that. That's just not any proof of 15. Iowa goes map 7 against Florida Mayhem. Right, and then loses. And then I still can't move them up because, hey, going to map 7 and losing is still losing. Why is NAU ahead of Ball State? Oh, that's probably Ninja Curly Fry. So, Ball State has a loss to Illinois Wesley. I've talked about this pretty regularly. This tier is a mess. This tier is also a mess. This tier is pretty darn stable. But Ball State, from the results that I've seen, has a loss to Illinois Wesleyan, and that's not good. Illinois Wesleyan isn't terrible. They're better than I was giving them credit for at the beginning of the season, but that's certainly not a good loss. They've played okay against some teams better than that are rated ahead of them, Ball State there, but that's a bad loss that we're looking at. Going at Ball State, they beat Mizzou, though I believe they dropped maps. They beat Cincinnati. Okay, LG. They beat Delaware, the Blue Hens. But, they lost to Bellevue, who, I don't think is an amazing team. I've got them down here. They lost to IWU, and I believe they actually lost to New York as well. And again, New York is fine. That's New York, good. New York is, probably top 30, maybe top 25. But when we look at New York's results, they lost to Delaware. And Delaware has, again, beat Mizzou, lost to Ball State, lost to Maryville. So we have a little bit of a circle of suck thing going on there where, beat them, etc. You know the drill. Okay. Oh, you're not Ninja Curly Fry? You're just Ninja? I figured you were Ninja Curly Fry because you were asking about Ball State and Ninja. You get the idea. McMaster B is too good of a win for BSU to be above any. Well played, Buck. Well played. But apparently it is because if you follow the convoluted path, McMaster's B team must actually be a top 20 team. I think we got it here. If we follow it, we can see they beat this and they beat. Okay, okay. Moving back along here. So Fisher Chips, we talked about Iowa there. Again, I was playing close against better teams. I really do think Iowa's a top 20 team. I probably think Iowa is right now. I probably personally would mentally think of their strength as like 18th, something like that. But in terms of results, ratings, matches, etc., it's hard. You look at it and you sort of go, they don't actually have any very good wins. They're just dealing with business, taking out top 30 teams, and then sort of going, yeah, we'll play close against top 10 teams. But you're losing. Get a match against a top 15 team. Okay, cool. So then we move on from there. UCI 2, UC Irvine has a second team this season. They're doing fine. They beat Pittsburgh. They beat Rutgers' second team. They lost to University of Texas Dallas. They lost to Rutgers. So, lose to real Rutgers, beat Rutgers' second team. Apparently, Rutgers' second team is a threat we need to worry about. Again, took out Georgia Tech. So yeah, that's what we're looking at, but they're certainly not playing up here because they're probably not playing up here because they took the loss to UTD there, which, I didn't think anyone really expected them to go up, but hey, that's what we're going to see. Northeastern, we can look at that. They beat Mizzou, they beat UCLA, UCF. Those aren't amazing wins. They lost to St. Clair and to Grandview. They're okay wins. It's a very similar thing to Iowa in a lot of ways, where you go, okay, those are okay wins. I mean, UCLA is fine. They can have off days, but UCLA is fine. Mizzou is better than people expected, but, quite a bit better. I have Mizzou over in here. But I think I have Mizzou over there. No, I have Mizzou over here. Excuse me. But looking at that, that's still something where you have to beat teams better than you to move any higher. Toronto is probably dead in ABC because they have a DQ loss, but I'm ranking teams based on their strength, based on how I expect them to do in matches that they would play. I don't actually care about DQs. And when you look at Toronto, they beat Oakland. Again, that's Croy's team. They beat Audley Omnick. They lost to Grandview. They lost to Illinois Orange. So they lost to Grandview. They lost to Illinois Orange. They beat some nothing teams. Sorry, that's mostly what we're talking about here. And they were good last season. We're probably not really going to see Toronto's limit because Toronto's unlikely to make it with 3 losses, one of them being a DQ, so 2 real losses, but 3 losses according to the standings. But I'm not seeing good evidence that they're not here. I mean, you can put them lower if you want, but again, these are sort of our, hey, they're doing what they're supposed to teams. Then we get into chaos as a ladder. We're down in this fun space here. You heard Ohio was mentioned. I mean, we can go right here. Ohio, right there. Ohio University, Ohio Esports. There we go. Ohio's got something for my mapping of teams. I've got Ohio Esports. St. Clair beat you guys. UTD beat you guys. You beat UF Orange. Grand Canyon University. Yeah, sorry. You're not actually that important for my map of results right now. Sorry. Okay. Oddly Omnic University. There you go. There you go. Crazy makes us high. Okay. Cool. So, moving on to our weird bubble plus area in terms of what are we doing here, what's going on. Again, we're descending into chaos here. So, Ball beat Mizzou, beat Cincinnati, beat Delaware, which is the Blue Hens. lost to Bellevue, lost to IWU, lost to NYU. Oh, okay, so I'm putting them at the top of this, even though there's a loss to here and a loss to New York, who would be in here as well. Yeah, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? That's just sort of. I know they're good. I know they can punch up. They've played some of the teams above them close. Maybe they should be lower. Maybe they should be down, over here in it, etc. But I'm having trouble moving them down quite that much. Maybe I should move them a little bit lower. The thing is, eh, yeah, maybe I, I yeah, maybe I should move them a little bit lower. The problem is if I try to move them lower, what you're going to find is these teams behind them are in just as bad a shape. UCSD, yeah, that used to be a top 20 team. That last season even got a win over Boise, and yeah, it can punch up, and it fought its way through a group that was a death group, and I think it had to eliminate a team, it had to eliminate a different top 20 team to do it because there were three good teams in there, and yeah, they're a great team. So let's look at UCSD and what theirs look like. Well, they beat UCLA, and they beat University of Washington and RPIA, and they lost to Boise and Converse and Marist. To Marist? Wait, they lost to Marist? So you start to see why I'm not moving Ball State down, because all of this is going to be a mess. Well, then we could go over to Waterloo. Waterloo is actually not in chaos, but their wins are over Ashland and Drexel. Their losses are to Bellevue and Converse. And again, I find this tier messy. This tier, these guys have some losses to this tier. Waterloo having losses to this tier, who I have less confidence in. It's just not quite as strong, so Waterloo ends up here. Waterloo being in this tier wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Maybe they belong there. I know Waterloo did get top 16 technically last season, but I think they were a pretty distant 16th behind the 13, 14, 15 teams. Good on them for taking advantage of a group that had Toronto just blow up and not perform, who, actually looked like they could potentially be a top 16 team there. But, good on them for taking advantage of it and sliding in like that. But hey, I'm going to need to see some wins. After we've got Waterloo, I would put Mizzou and New York University in here. Mizzou beat Converse, lost to Northeastern University, Ball State, UD Blue Hens. So, okay, that's pretty important. New York University beat UST, Georgia Tech, lost to Alvernia, Delaware, Delaware Blue Hens. Okay, fine. Our Blue Hens again went right after Ball State. Sorry, not having the icon for this is messing me up. Blue Hens beat Mizzou, beat Cal, beat Arizona Esports. Arizona Esports have one relevant win, is why that gets weird. I don't actually think they're a great team, but they have one relevant win. They lost to Ball State and Maryville. Okay, fine. So they're somewhere in here. This whole thing is messy. And then, we get to IWU. They beat the Ball State. They beat Bronco Black, who's a nothing team but has a pretty good record right now. They lost to Fisher Chips, Fisher Navy, Texas A&M Maroon. Wait, hold on. You lost to Texas A&M Maroon? Well, again, we go back to Texas A&M Maroon. They, lost to McMaster's B team and Rutgers. Again, you see where this works. This just becomes a mess. Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech should be pretty good. Georgia Tech has fangs. Georgia Tech has fangs. They beat Utah. They beat Ohio State. They beat Columbia International. They lost to Northwood and Rutgers Reign in New York University. Wait, they lost to New York University and Rutgers Reign. They lost to Rutgers Reign. This tier's a mess. Utah, they're 7-1. That's fantastic, right? Yeah, they lost to Georgia Tech, who again lost to Rutgers Reign. I'm not bashing Rutgers Reign that hard, guys. Rutgers Reign is an okay team, but they're not a top 30 team. I don't think they're a top 30 team. I don't think they're a top 28 team. How's that? And again, UW, hey, they're also 7-1. They beat Redbirds Academy, which is Redbird's second team, and Redbirds is weaker than previous seasons. Okay. And GMU, which is usually a 4-2 team, and they lost to UCSD. And UCSD is in top 20. And UW is 7-1. Hey, maybe Washington earns it and goes, hey, we're getting in, we're making it. Fine. You can still make it even without being top 20. There's 32 spots this season. This season, there's no group stage. It's straight into top 32 make it, but only about 25% of the 7 and 3 teams will make it. So this last week will be very important, and it's a bit messy with some good teams in lower spots than you might expect, so you might have to play them because of DQs. Fisher Sticks, I don't know. Fisher Sticks, we sort of look at that, and they beat Minnesota, the Pizza Pirates. They lost to Grandview and Ohio State. If you lost to Ohio State, that feels a little disqualifying. Again, Ohio State lost to Georgia Tech. Like, Ohio State isn't that, top 18, top 16 level team this season, or at least they weren't in the first week or two of this season. So yeah. So yeah, that's about what things look like. I can go through these last two teams, I suppose, since they're right here. Again, UC LA beat UCSD, but no, not UCSD, excuse me. They lost to UCSD this time and to MSOE Raiders. They've got some other wins, fine, whatever. Pizza Pirates would probably go right in here. And then Marist beat UCSD, but lost to Rutgers, Iowa, and Pizza Pirates. They are probably out. Out of ABC. Again, I think Toronto's out of ABC as well, but I'm not going, oh, they're not a top 25 team just because they're out. That doesn't mean anything. That, it's annoying, but me power ranking is not the same as which teams are eliminated. Anyway, so that sort of goes through my rankings. I don't think it's meaningful to rank teams lower than this, but let me know what you guys are thinking. Are you guys hating one of my tiers? Or you guys have specific teams you want to ask about, roughly where I want to rate them? Do you guys want to go more through the standings here? I'm always pretty open. Googled McMaster to make sure it was a real thing. You prove soon top 20? Good to hear it. Good to hear it. Ohio. Yeah, there you go. Beat Fisherman on Wednesday. I don't think that puts you in rank 1, but it would be a good way. It would be, if you beat Fisherman, it would be very hard. If you beat Fisherman and Fisherman didn't have absences, it would be very hard for committee members to deny you like top 15. Now, Fisherman's better than top 15, but generally, when Mizzou beat Converse, Mizzou didn't get like, oh, now they're in top 15. They moved up in my results and Converse moved down, but I would need to see a second win from Mizzou. And Mizzou getting shut down by Northeastern and Ball State, unless Northeastern and Ball State are actually both, top 15 teams, which I guess also means Illinois Wesleyan is a top 16. Yeah, I don't know what to do with that. Yeah. Warm up was good. I was happy to have the warm up. Rather, I don't know that was the cleanest warm up you guys. I believe that's Utah. There have ever delivered. I'm sure you guys have had better warm ups than that. But hey, you got done what you needed to. Utah's 7-1 right now, and we went and won our matches as well. So no complaints. Both teams did good coming out of warm up. It was not your best day. Do all these schools invest into the esports scene, or are most of them club based? It's a mix. So in previous seasons, I've done this analysis before, and like in our top 16, we probably had about 25 to 40% that were club teams before. Now we're much closer to most teams that are in the top 20 are varsity programs. Rutgers, I believe, is still a club program. Maryville is a varsity program. We'll do this. Varsity, club, varsity, second varsity team, varsity. There were rumors that seemed to have been exaggerated of them folding their varsity program. Maybe they held on for another semester, year. Maybe they're still going to fold. I don't know. Varsity. I think this is a varsity program. I'm not actually sure. This is a club I know, or was last season. I don't know what Grandview is. This is a varsity program, though they would say it's too low investment. This is varsity. They're on scholarship. They're on scholarship. I think they're on scholarship. They've got to be. They're on scholarship. They're varsity. Yeah. Varsity. This is a second team, so whatever. I'll just put a two. This is varsity. I don't know. This might be club. This might be club. I don't know. Iowa? What's Iowa? ASU is still club. Okay. Hey, Ninja. Yeah, you're not liking that Converse rating. I'm not surprised. I suspect I'm gonna have some haters for this entire tier. Honestly, I suspect that I am at personally concerned that the committee is going to overrate people that I've put in this tier because these are certainly good players. You know, they're known around the scene, etc. All three of these teams, but all three of these teams have bad losses, like bad losses at this point. And Bellevue previously saved itself from just shooting downwards by beating Converse, but now Converse has the loss to Mizzou. Um, and you know that. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. You guys are going to work hard to overcome that, and I, expect you to be pretty dedicated to climbing yourself back up to this tier. But right now, this is where I got to put you. It just is. Iowa's a club. Okay, yeah. So, and I love those stories. I love those stories where a program shows up and is just like, "Hey, we're going to be good this season." It's been Rutgers, it's been UCSD. This season, it may very well be Iowa, based on what we're seeing. Where it's like, nope, we've got someone sort of showing up almost out of nowhere and going, "We are going to be very good." And we're doing it as a club. And don't get me wrong, this isn't like Division One heavy scholarship for all these schools. Some of these schools, obviously, you can see Fisher has pretty meaningful scholarship money they throw around. Maryville as well, Boise as well, Northwood as well. But others of these, UTD scholarship money is a little bit light. Northeastern scholarship money might be a little bit light. Irvine, a little bit in the middle. Um, that sort of thing. So, even if a program is varsity, that just means they've got the school partially bought in. That doesn't mean it's bought in the way someone might be on, oh, they're here on football scholarship, so they're going to go to school for 4 years for free and their entire life is constructed around. No. People still have to make their grades. People still mostly have to be able to get into the school, all those sorts of things. You'll take someone's late money if they don't want it. There you go. There you go. Okay. SLU number one, please. Let's catch up on chat here. Iowa State is ISU trademarked. Oh, Iowa State as opposed to Illinois State University. Okay, well, I don't know what to tell you. In the Overwatch scene, Northeastern felt the same way, where Northeastern wanted to be NU. Like, if you look at our social media, it's, NU is what Twitter tag, etc. looks like, but Northwood was the more dominant Overwatch team, and it stuck. Same thing with, you might be asking, why the heck do I keep abbreviating BSC as BSCVA, Bryant Stratton University, or Bryant Stratton, not University, Bryant Stratton College, as Bryant Stratton College Varsity Athletics? Why do I keep abbreviating it like that rather than just calling it BSC? And the reason is because Bay State was the better, more dominant Overwatch team and had the same abbreviation. And that's why this is sort of stuck. And, ISU, Iowa State University, you're second to the party where these guys showed up. I know Iowa State's actually been in Overwatch for a while competing, but Redbirds just put dominant performance up there and were clearly a dominant team for a good year and a half there. And so it's going to be very hard for you guys to win back the ISU abbreviation. Okay. Thought you were going to win with your scuffed roster for Rutgers versus Grandview there. You could have had it. You could have had it. I think Grandview has come a little bit back down to earth, and I do want to see them continue to perform. I think Grandview had a really good hot streak. I think Grandview is better than people expected, but also had a good hot streak. I would not be surprised if they cooled down a little bit. I don't think they're going to cool down to like 25, but I think they could cool down to like an 18 sort of thing. Or they could get hungry again. It could happen. I think they had a good few days there. And I think, that Rutgers win, even if it was against a totally substituted, roster flipped around team, fed them fuel to do very well going into the weekend. And they've still done fine since then. Don't get me wrong, but I want to see more from them. I would like to see another win. Okay. Not all varsities are created equal. That is true investment wise and sometimes performance wise. The longer you let us play, the better we will get. We have a lot of issues right now, but I can't argue with the rating. Yeah, no, the longer. I expect teams that are serious, and I expect Converse to stay serious, will be cleaner in the spring. The spring teams, again, we're in a brawl meta right now, and we're in the fall right now. Both of those things were towards the early portion of a brawl meta. We haven't been in a brawl. It's not like we've been in a brawl meta for 9 months. But when something resembling a brawl meta, and we're in the fall. And both of those things make things messier, make things more wee in terms of where things go, in terms of a greater number of upsets. We sort of had the privilege for the last year and a half of Overwatch 1 not being that different for periods of time, so teams got very stable and matches became a lot more predictable than they were in the beginning of the collegiate scene. The better team won like 8.5 out of 10 times instead of 6.5 out of 10 times, and that's a pretty big swing. And we're sort of getting back closer. Well, we were, like 9 times out of 10 versus 6.5 out of 10. And we're sort of getting back closer to that 6.5 out of 10 thing. We're not actually there. We're still at like a good 7 out of 10 times the better team wins, but it gets messy. It's messy right now. Am I ready for the hog meta in season 2? I am absolutely ready for the hog meta in 2 seasons. Sign me up. Sign me up. My roster will have a blast with that meta. You were down Orion for that game? That sucks. And you'll notice I didn't pull you down. I didn't put Mizzou ahead of you, but I did pull you down. Anything is better than Bastion? One hog mirror in ESC? Maybe. Okay. If anyone else has anything that they want to add, comment-wise, you can throw it up now. I'll give it about 1 more minute, but I think we're mostly in sort of retreadish territory. The fact that we're waiting on the game that likely isn't getting played sucks. Oh, right. We would like to see our new matches. Everyone would like to see their new matches. I thought the last game we were going to be waiting on was BSC versus Northwood. Northwood won that match 3-0. But it looks like there's still one match that's outstanding, which, I guess they'll get DQ'd at midnight. I don't know. Probably midnight Western because, Blizzard is Western. So, my time, which is still a few hours away. Are all these top 20? Well, no, these can't all be top 20. If we want to count our 20 mark, we've got 4, 8, 15, 18. These are my top 18. I guess Iowa just barely makes top 20, and these 3 are out. I don't actually think there's very much difference between these teams right now. It would be hard-pressed for me to rate them. None of these teams have amazing wins. They don't. But they've also managed to avoid picking up any losses that they shouldn't have. So that's why they're here. And because none of them have great wins, it's sort of hard. It's not like they've played each other. They're just, good proving teams. I hate it because my team's in here, but at the moment, these teams look like good proving teams for the teams above them. Now, come fight us. Come prove yourself against us because we'll take you and we'll take your spot. But okay. But yeah, if you wanted to, I guess my top 20 would look like this right now. Yeah. And that's a pretty reasonable top 20, I think. I may end up pulling Redbirds out because I think too many other people on the committee are just not voting Redbirds or just pretending that they don't exist, and that sort of makes my Redbird vote worthless. So maybe for Okra voting, I'll move it around a tiny bit, but this is probably what my top 20 look like, and I wouldn't expect it to change very much because votes are due Wednesday for results to come out on Saturday. So you might see a couple Legends games happen Wednesday night and Thursday that would have changed votes, but we won't have had access to those before votes are submitted, even though you won't see the results of the votes on the graphic and such for the committee until Saturday. Why are St. Clair and BSC the same as Northwood and above UCI? That's very easy to explain. These two were in the same tier because this is the tier that they belong in. Why are they above UCI? That's pretty easy because UCI lost to St. Clair. Does that answer the question? Like, when we look at that, UCI lost to St. Clair, so maybe you go, oh, but should it be like this? I mean, that's an okay argument, except that it was not a particularly, like these two had a very close match, BSC and St. Clair. Not so much true here. We also heard Irvine didn't look particularly good against Fisher Wisp there, and that might look like, oh, there's a ton of distance. UCI shouldn't look good against Fisher Wisp, except that before we'd have had UCI around like here-ish, and they failed. I know. I am very aware that Grandview. Okay, you clearly just got here, Danielle, and that's fine. I'm very aware that it's a clown match, and I'm not taking that one seriously. But I've literally read off the results for the other matches. In terms of Grandview, they pretend to beat Rutgers, but they, got the NEU, Toronto, UST, CIU. They have a loss to St. Clair. Like that's fine. They for that week of play established that they belong here. Might they cool off a bit more and fall down to like 18 or something? I believe it. In fact, I think it's reasonably likely. But based on the results, this is what we're looking at. This is what we're looking at, and this isn't because they beat Rutgers. They're not here for the win over Rutgers. They're here for the other performance. Okay. But what do you think, Daniel? Why were you not aware of those results in terms of what BSC and St. Clair had done, or do you feel like St. Clair or BSC is significantly worse than that? Because again, Irvine just lost to St. Clair. And again, I'm looking at the committee, and I think we're going to see the committee votes look pretty different than this. I think the committee is going to be a little too fixated on, I recognize these players, I recognize this roster should be good, and not look at results. But hey, maybe I'm not giving them enough credit. Maybe the committee is going to be great on this. Okay, not getting an answer there, so we'll go ahead and call it. I hope you guys have enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one.